Now, speaking of sort of having that focus on the people, one of the hashtags that you and I have been sharing is hashtag defund the police. Now, oftentimes when people first hear this notion of defunding the police, they immediately think all out war or lawlessness, and the visual of a lone cop trying to do it all himself. But folks who are skeptical about defunding the police usually feel that way because they don't know about the alternatives to a militarized police, to the structure that we already have, and they don't know that there are ideas out there that can replace or supplement our current corrupt system. For our audience members that are still skeptical, why should we defund the police, and where should we reinvest that money instead?
Yeah, and I think it really comes down to, I think the main thing about, I mean, defunding the police as it's self-explanatory in that hashtag itself, it's defund the police because we need to defund the police.
Mhm.
It doesn't, in a city especially where a lot of people are not having access to the resources that they need and the care and services that they need to spend most of that money on policing instead of on care. I think is the imbalance that really shows like, no, this is not where we want our money to be spent on to police us, especially when crime hasn't risen that much in terms of LA and where it's been, and in terms of the unnecessary excessive force that's being used by the police, and that being supersized by a million times with the recent curfews in the past few days, because once you have a curfew, we're not able to know what's being done outside.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably 99% of things we haven't caught on camera. And it's all the horrible videos we see on Twitter, that's probably just 1% of it
Oh
because
yeah.
we have curfew. And so it's just, and I'm glad to say that LA City and the county stopped doing curfews as of today because ACLU and Black Lives Matter and different attorneys and plaintiffs sued LA City, Mayor Garcetti, Chief Moore, and the county yesterday. They filed their complaint yesterday. And today the city and county said, okay, we're not doing curfews because they've realized, holy shit, what have we been what have we been endorsing and supporting? And it's like somebody slapped them in the face or punched them in the face. Is like, yo, you're encouraging even more violence and escalated violence right now and hostility in a time where we actually need like the government to be able to have an open door policy and say, okay, tell us everything of what's on your hearts right now. Instead of having that response, you're saying, go home. And it's like, what? And I think that's where this whole I mean, the defund the police thing actually started before the recent protests because it actually started when the city budget came out and it actually showed that 54% of it was going to the police budget, even more than last year. And in a time where like our neighborhood council system, for example, if you look at, I don't have the graph with me, but if you follow the Glowing Stars, Jane Nguyen,
Mm-hmm.
she's a co-founder of K-Town for All. The Glowing Stars, she has graphics on there. But if you look at it and you look at how 3+ billion is being allocated to LAPD, but then for our neighborhood council services, it's like a very, very small fraction of a percentage of that. And it's like, what the heck? Like, then why do you even have our neighborhood council system if you're giving us pennies in comparison to this policing system in force? Like, in terms of like residents of LA have been complaining about our streets and potholes for years, and you're not fixing that. And like in the budget, there's nothing for that, and you're still going to policing. In terms of our support services for our marginalized communities and unhoused communities, like you're not increasing that, but you're decreasing it so the police force could be increased. And so I think it's the first, I think first part is the injustice part of you put your money where your mouth is, like really like where are your priorities now for the people? And I think that's the first thing about the movement. And then the second thing is it's going towards this. And I think it's that reaction that some people might have when you and I first heard about UBI is, what you mean defunding the police, get rid,
Yeah.
like what? And so I think it's that reaction where it's like, yeah, of course, David, of course, Rainier. In an ideal world, I would want a society with
Yeah.
no police and where people know how to do and what they do. And like that's probably the reaction, but it's like, come on, be real. But I think like we can get there in the sense of if we like, I don't know, when I see community officers who aren't militarized like the normal police here,
Mm-hmm.
like when I see them, like, or the traffic security people, or I think we still give them that deference. And so if we're able to go ahead, and there's different kind of theories and ways and studies on how to go ahead and do that. And I think it's sort of primarily around the idea of, like, similarly like to the citizen arrest, but in a way like a citizen type of role, or a quasi citizen type of role, or a social worker role, where we're relying on these helpful community members, people that we can actually trust and have relationships with, to be able to be the people that are facilitating and helping with resolving and mediating disputes. Because if we actually had a structured out system like that, where people like Marianne Williamson or other people can have a say in implementing and Black Lives Matter and all of these different groups in implementing a structure like that, then we can do it. Like, it is possible, but we just haven't tried it because our priorities aren't there. If our priorities are there, then yeah, we can try it and implement it and see how it does as pilots. And so I think that's also, I mean, maybe we're talking about something that's too early to be talked about right now. Maybe we're not. But I think what's important for us is, regardless of the possibility or the probability, I think what's important for us activists is to keep on pushing for this, because the more we push, the more that it'll be exposed and talked about. And that's how we start a conversation. And so, for those who are still don't understand, or still trying to understand it, that's fine. But don't let that keep you from closing yourself off immediately from different views or opinions you haven't heard of. Because for me, Rainier, I'm being challenged every day, because I'm not claiming to be the policy expert on things, because I was a normal citizen. I was a normal attorney just trying to help out struggling artists to not get ripped off by their expensive attorneys. So finding ways to help them on a more affordable basis. That's what I was focused on. So I'm not a policy expert. So I'm learning about these things every day, just as everyone else is. And so, but for what's important to me though, is going to those people who have been working on the ground up, who have been in those grassroots organizations, doing the work, doing the research, actually helping their communities and organizing it. And so I'll go to those people who know climate change policy best. I'll go to Sunrise Movement LA. In regards to LA City budget and how it affects us on a more statistic level and on an actual level, I'll go to People's City Council LA and Black Lives Matter. When it comes to how we can help our unhoused residents and neighbors, I'll go to K-Town for All, because I think what our politicians and elected officials have forgotten is this co-governance idea with the people of, just because you say it is doesn't mean that it's right for the communities, because you were actually put there by the communities. So you do your job and represent the communities and not represent what's going on in your head. And so I think that's what's very important. And so a thing that I really just want for those to understand is, like, yes, it's very important to have your own values and what you're aligned with. But I think that's just a basic requirement of how to be an effective voice for your community, because you're supposed to kind of synthesize the two, or actually use your character or your personal quality traits to be that effective voice for your community. So yeah. I know that's kind of we went off on a different direction. But,
no.
But yeah,
I appreciate it. I'm actually also glad that you brought up about being a voice to the community, because my next question is, as both of us know, LA in particular has a very long and complicated history of race and racism and interracial conflict between different marginalized communities, between Black and Latino and Asian communities. As an Asian American who grew up there, how can the rest of the Asian community build better bridges of solidarity between Asian and Black and Latino communities?
Yeah, I think it's definitely standing up in solidarity during these moments, going out and joining the protests, going out and vocally supporting, because I think, hold on, let me look up my campaign internal head posted this, and I was like, that's so right on. And I think it's very important for us to be engaging in these types of conversations. Here's the quote: "Silence is complicity, apathy is deplorable, appropriation is disrespect, unawareness is intentional." And I think it's very important because we have a choice to turn our focus onto something. We
Yeah.
have a choice to turn our attention to something.
Hmm.
And so if you, and I'm not shaming people or anything, but you have a choice to be interested in something or not, to go ahead and go to your phone, open the browser because it's not that hard, to Google search a few terms and to learn more about a topic or issue. It's not that hard, but it's whether or not our interest is in there. And so I think for us to sort of cop out all the time and say, "Oh, I wasn't aware," or "Oh, that I just want to stay quiet," I think that's an intentional choice that you're making.
Hmm.
And I think it's also realizing that in this world that we live in, on this huge planet, but then conversely, perspectively wise, a small rock in this vast space spinning around. It's like, well, what is your worldview? And I think that's what we need to realize. Like, if this world and life is all about you, then I probably can't connect with you. But if you're able to take your mind a little farther, realize that there's 7 billion of us on this rock spinning perfectly, where we're not shaking here and there, like on a cruise in space with planets all around us. And if you think on a bigger perspective, it's like, there's a bigger purpose to us. And I think it's for us to really love each other as humanity. And how are we doing that? And so I think with that coming to sense, it's it's being more engaged with our communities, having the talks that we need to do, being connected with all of that. And so I think it's a fundamental thing that we need to change and to kind of move towards in our conversation, in talking about how do we as Asian Americans support each other, whether it be our Black brothers and sisters, or our brown brothers and sisters, or our white. And I think it's in the sense of, if we're able to realize that color or physical features aren't really anything that separate us, but actually unify us more, I think that's where we're able to kind of stay and say, hey, I support this too, because it means so much to me. It doesn't make sense that he or she as a human being is experiencing this and I'm standing up for it and I'm supporting it and just vocalizing it. And I don't think it's necessarily, and this is just my personal take. I don't know if you saw this one. I know this is a ad lib or a tangent to
Hmm.
this topic or this answer, Rainier, but I saw the quote, "Yellow Peril supports Black Power,"
Yeah. Yeah.
and I get the whole intention of supporting that too, but then I also want to say, like, before we start using words like yellow peril, like, go look up where that originated from, because it was a very derogatory racist term towards Asians worldwide
Hmm.
at the time that it was originated, not just to a region.
Hmm.
And so but yes, I think it's very important though for us to be standing for each other in our different communities, and to be vocalizing that. And I think locally as well, I was just at a protest in front of the mayor's house. I go to the mayor's house a lot now, I guess. I've never met the mayor, but I go to his house to protest a lot. But I was there, and I ran into these constituents that I had met during primary election cycle when I was out canvassing and meeting people, and they were there, and she reached out to me, and she was just saying, like, because she's also half Korean, half Black. I also have a boyfriend who's Black, and she was just knowing that we connect on that. She's like, hey, let's create a community dialogue, because I know that some people in Koreatown were afraid that this might affect them, but then they're very supportive of it. So should we have the Korean businesses put on, we support Black Lives Matter, we condemn the murders of so and so, putting that on their restaurant or store windows, and showing that support.
Hmm.
Um, uh, and having, and I've seen videos where we have citizens protecting um, these random, like, looters who don't even make a fraction of a percent of the protesters, looting the stores, and citizens protecting that. And like, so it's kind of increasing dialogue as to how do we help each other out during these times while still standing up for each other. um, and I think it all comes down to community, on the community level. Like,
Hmm.
start talking, start engaging, start
Yep.
talking with people, because once you talk with 2 or 3 people, those 3 people will then talk with their other people, and that's how we start conversation and
Hmm.
dialogue. And so even if it's just like sharing this video, sharing any of the stuff that you put out, I think it's very important to do.
How can we support your congressional campaign, and where can we find you, David?
Oh, great. Awesome. Yeah. So you can support our campaign. Go sign up to volunteer, davidkim2020.com/volunteer. We have a really strong chance of winning the election. Our opponent only won a collective 40, no, a collective 52% of the primary election, 52% of the primary election, and then myself and the other three challengers, we collectively won a 48%. We have their endorsements and support. So it's basically a numbers game. We just need to increase the voter base a little bit and gain a few more percentages in the lead, and then we'll win. So we need volunteers to phone bank, to text bank. So sign up there, davidkim2020.com/volunteer. And then you can also click the donate button on our website as well. And then also, if you have any family or friends living in the LA area, in CD 34, the 34th Congressional District, please ask them if they'd be willing to host a Zoom house party. So what that is just hosting a Zoom meeting. You're inviting 3 to 8 friends, and then you invite me, and then I talk with your friends or family for about 20, 30 minutes, answering questions, talking about our campaign platform, and then replicating that where 2 people from that meet then host their own Zoom meets. And so that's what I'm about to go off to in 4 minutes. We're trying it out, our first beta test. So yeah, so I think that's how we actually win. It's through engagement and conversation like this. So
Awesome. Well,
please help.
David, I gotta say, I threw every hardball at you. I'm thoroughly impressed. I think that the first thing that I noticed right off the bat is you were very human. You seem very grounded in all the issues that you're talking about. And even though, unfortunately, I'm not in California, which I would love to be in, I definitely support your campaign, and you'll definitely hear me singing your praises. So we would love to have you back on sometime, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Rainier. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And I think these platforms are great, and thank you for extending that to us.
Definitely. Well, David, have a wonderful, wonderful evening. I know you have a lot ahead on your schedule, but we'll definitely keep in touch.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, David.